All right, everyone, you've heard how excited I am over the new WGN show, Manhattan, about the Manhattan Project, and I have a great chance to talk to the creator and executive producer of the show, Sam Shaw. Sam, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Sam, I have to be completely transparent here. I am a kind of a geek for that era of history and science, and I think the stuff that's been declassified about Area 51 really kind of shows the lifestyle folks had to lead during that era to move some of our technology kind of down the ball field. And your show captures this immensely, and I want you to speak to that relative, because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. This is not a History Channel piece, but this is a character drama that really captures a moment in history, does it not?
Well, thanks so much. It does. I hope it does. And by the way, one unabashed geek to another. I'm with you. So let's both be transparent in our geekdom. No, look, this is a moment in history that most people know a little bit about. I knew a bit about before I started working on this project 5 or 6 years ago. But it really, in a way, is sort of the birth of a whole era of military secrecy that we're still living with now. And so the story of the birth of the atomic bomb is really the story of the birth of a different kind of American military and a whole quagmire of secrecy that we're still trying to reckon with 70 years later.
So, Sam, how did this birth in the old cerebral cortex? I mean, what was it about the event that kind of stuck with you of, I'd love to tell a story about that someday?
You know, it sounds a little crazy to say, but this actually began as a project for me about a totally different war and a totally different decade. I started writing something about the War on Terror, and a piece of writing that was set in the present day. And in the process of doing a lot of research and reading about the history of the military-industrial complex in this country and the birth of a different kind of secrecy that we're trying to reckon with right now in this moment, where we're trying to figure out how transparent we want our government to be and how we wield our military force in the world. In the course of researching all that, what I came to find is that all roads lead back to the New Mexico desert, that the story of the birth of the world's first atomic bomb is really kind of the great 21st century American origin story. It's sort of the story of how we got to where we are.
Well, that it is, and I've been able to go through the first 2 episodes, and as I said on the show, it's you have to watch them both, folks. You got to give the first 2 episodes as one giant premiere. So it starts Sunday, but you have next Sunday. You have to watch that one too before you can pass judgment, because then you'll see the manifestation of a lot of great characters, and then you start to really get the gravitas of the show and what they're really trying to capture. And Sam, I have to tell you that I'm blown away. And I wanted to ask, is it...
Oh, cool, man. Thank you so much. And by the way, thanks for saying that, too. It really, we do feel in a way that these first 2 episodes are kind of a 2-parter in a way. They, a lot of chess pieces get set up in our first hour of storytelling. But it's really only by the end of the second, I think, that the scope of the show kind of in the complicated situation of the characters really becomes totally clear.
Is that a lot of the credit to WGN by picking up the whole season instead of having to add a bit of a punch or pizzazz to a pilot to ensure it gets picked up? Because that was one of the things that I've been telling people. I says, this isn't the traditional sort of program. This is like the whole season's picked up. So you're going to see a different pacing for character development, a different way of handling those characters, because you're not rushed with a big wham-bam pilot that has to get everybody's attention.
Absolutely. The TV business it's a funny business. This focus on pilots creates a really odd kind of storytelling where writers and producers feel this pressure to cram a big plot turn that might appear in episode 3 of a show if you had the freedom to pace the storytelling the way that you would have liked to. Instead, it's going to appear in minute 6 of the first episode of minute 6 of the pilot. And for me, as an audience member, I like to get to know who the characters are. I like to kind of make my way into a world and get oriented. And that's the incredible blessing we've had in going straight to series with this show, is that we've approached this first season as a 13-hour movie instead of feeling a need to to blow up some buildings and have a car chase and et cetera within the first 30 seconds of our story. So really, instead, this is a character story, and I hope that the audience will fall in love with our characters in the same way that we have. It's been incredibly gratifying to be able to spend 13 hours with some really complicated characters played by some incredibly brilliant actors, I have to say. This cast of ours has been an incredible blessing.
Well, I want to get to that because I think that you've got so many incredible plot lines. And again, going back to this capturing the history moment here, because you've got the brainiac scientist, but then you also got sort of the curmudgeon who's a little bit of the lone wolf obsessed with his science, juggling both of those. But then you also have the dynamic of sexism of the time, prejudices of the time, some different things. As a writer, how do you sort of carve that out and approach that during the creative process so that you kind of are moving, you use chess piece, I like that a lot, by the way, each chess piece on the board appropriately?
Well, part of the deal for us is, you're absolutely right, the history is fascinating, the science is mind-bending. This is it really, in its way, is a true life science fiction story of the greatest geniuses on the planet, uprooted from their lives and moved to a secret city in the middle of nowhere to invent this weapon that's either going to save the world or to destroy it. And they can't talk to their wives and their children and their neighbors about it. So it's all taking place in this bubble of secrecy. It's so fascinating. But for me, moment to moment, what's been so cool and so gratifying in creating the show and telling the story is that it's very much a show about the day-to-day complexities and conflicts in the lives of these characters. It really is about the characters first and the history second. And so the most pleasurable moments are the moments when the characters seem to take on a life of their own, and they begin to surprise us, the writers, in the way that they, the choices they make, which it sounds a little kind of new agey, but it really is true that particularly when you have such great actors playing these roles, you get into a place where by episode 5 and 6 you're looking at the performances of the actors in episodes 1 and 2, and they begin to inform the way you think about the characters and the choices they're making, and at some point the thing really takes on this sort of organic life of its own. That's the sort of spookiest and the coolest part about my job is when you find that a story takes you someplace where you never thought it would take you. It's incredibly exciting.
I want to touch on that just a bit further too, as I do a lot of the writing myself, and I wanted to get you to kind of share with the audience that emotion when you've spent years putting this together. Then of course the mad rush of production, and then you're trying to pull all this together. You film your season, you sit down. When you see that first episode, the second episode, you start to see it manifested. What actually is the emotional part that's going through your body?
Oh, it's nuts. It's the craziest thing in the world. Look, most people who become writers are we're sort of half socialized. We spend a lot of time locked away in a cave somewhere, staring at a computer screen. Which isn't to say it's not that I'm a misanthrope. I love working with other people, but I spend a lot of time kind of in my own little hermetic cell, working by myself. And TV, just by its nature, it's a collaborative medium. It takes hundreds and hundreds of people bringing all of their creativity and their heart and their intelligence to bear on something to make it as entertaining and as exciting as it can be. The only way it ever works is when it becomes, the labor of love of 300, 400 people. And so inevitably, it's different from the thing that lived in your head, when you started all by yourself years ago. And that's incredibly inspiring. It's the greatest thing is to watch a scene and to find a moment where a character comes to life in a way that you never imagined the character coming to life, or to, for me, walking around our sets, which are just breathtaking. I mean, we have 11 acres of 1943 New Mexico that we've built here. It's like walking around colonial Williamsburg, except instead of churning butter, you're inventing nuclear apocalypse. And to be able to walk around and open cupboards and see that they're full of plates, and it's just a world that you've imagined suddenly has three-dimensional reality in life. It's there's nothing cooler in a career than having that experience.
We're talking with Sam Shaw, the creator of the Manhattan. It is the new WGN show. It premieres on Sunday. That's 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, folks. And when we were talking with Ashley Zuckerman about the show, he was really talking about being character driven and all of these different things. But I want to ask from the creator standpoint, how much of the depth did you put in the initial screenplay, the initial script, when it came to set design, costumings, whatever, or did you just allow that creative? Because this show just knocks your socks off from the realism. That's my opinion. Is that what happened for you, Sam, or did you actually put a little bit of that in there?
Well, thank you so much for saying that, by the way, and it's totally a tribute to the incredible work of our costume designer, Alonzo Wilson, who's a genius, and Ruth Ammons, our production designer, has done such incredibly brilliant work. The thing is that you come to realize eventually is that all of those things are story. Costume is story. Production design is story. So, one character may wear a shirt that is never ironed, and that's an expression of who that person is. And another character may always have a particularly loud tie. He may be someone who takes great pride in picking out the right tie every morning. That's all. Every one of those choices is a window into who those characters are, and it begins to teach us about what the story is. And so, what's been incredibly great to me in this process is that our production designer, our costume designer, everybody who is thinking every day about every one of those details. What kind of pencils are sitting on a cup on somebody's desk? How are we dressing these sets? What photos would a person have on their wall in their dorm room? Those aren't choices that are just being made from a kind of artistic or aesthetic standpoint, but they're all coming from a deep place of wanting to tell the story and push the story forward and bring the characters to life. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think that the people working on this show have done such an extraordinary job of bringing the world to life in a way that is textured and feels real and helps make 1943 not this sort of distant Vaseline-lensed idea of the past, but something that's really present and tactile and real.
Absolutely. And again, I'm a bit of a history geek, and I tell you folks, I was just so impressed by being able to capture that. You're so engaged in the story, sometimes we don't give credit to that. And the costuming, the set design, and the realism of what people are going through was just one of the most fascinating parts of it all, Sam. And I want to switch gears as we close, though, because I think one of the fascinating stories you touched on a little bit, obviously, is the amount of secrecy, the government involvement, the surveillance that we're now dealing with the NSA. They're capturing every electronic piece of data. So every phone call you and I, Sam, we're being locked away somewhere in Utah.
I know.
With
in some old storage room here, for all eternity, you and I will be preserved.
Well, we're part of the 12 exabytes of data in Utah that will be there for God knows how long until someone deletes the file. But how does this, as you put this together and you're pitching this and you're talking to folks about this, does it click with people that this was like, I don't want to say step one, but it was at least step one or step two of this massive industrial military complex that we know today? Well, we kind of understand, because we still, I don't think, really understand it, but we at least know a little bit of how far we've gotten. That here you have a little town of Los Alamos, and they're monitoring everything. They know every little intricate detail of what's going on. But now here it is 2014, and we realize that they are, in a way, doing the same thing to the whole country. And that's kind of a pretty shocking and eye-opening thing. And I'm not sure, did your group get that metaphor?
Oh, yeah. Well, look, we have a phenomenal cast and crew who are really, they love talking about all these issues. And so you sort of can't stop any two people or three people standing around by the craft services table on our set and without overhearing a bit of conversation about some news item that seems to reach back to 1943 into the Manhattan Project. But there are such great, strange, complicated ironies of all of this. Part of it is these scientists moved to a town where they basically lived in a security state, where their phone calls were monitored and their mail was censored, and they had people, living on top of them in these apartment complexes with thin walls, and there was no privacy, and they were all under surveillance at every moment of every day. And so part of what's so odd about that is what all of it was about was preserving democracy and liberty and freedom, and those were the stakes of this battle. It was a very real sense that Western civilization as we know it might cease to exist. And so this sort of strange irony that they were throwing away a lot of their freedoms and their liberties in order to save freedom and liberty. I mean, it's incredibly complicated, and that's very much the conversation we're having right now, which is how much of our freedom and how much of our privacy are we willing to trade away in order to feel safe and to feel that we're securing an American ideal of freedom and privacy and liberty. And that's very much what our story is about at some fundamental level, and I think it's a conversation that we're still trying to grapple with right now in 2014.
We'll wrap up with a more of a fun question, Sam. What's a bit of the stuff that's in Sam Shaw's library? Because you don't write an espionage sort of tale, whether if people want to call it this or not. But is there a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy book in your house? We got some of those kind of things. What are some of the things that are on your shelf that you just like? Yeah, that was.
Oh my God! Well, I'll tell you what's on my bookshelves. My wife and I just moved, and so I wish we had shelves. They're just stacks of books.
There's just boxes of books.
The fire trap right now. But you know what? The great sadness for me of the last whatever it's been, 9 or 10 months of serious work and driving toward production has been that there's very little time to read those books. But no, I love a good spy story. I love fiction, and so it's been a while since I read a novel, but there's a tall stack of them that is threatening to topple over and crush me once we wrap production and I get back to pulling books out of that Jenga stack of fiction and nonfiction.
The Jenga stack. That's what my wife's going to start calling it now, Sam. Thank you very much. It's going to be, if you don't read something from the Jenga stack of Brad Thor, I'm going to get rid of them. I can just hear that now.
I will say that the one, the one great virtue of actually setting this show up and getting to produce it is that the probably 300 or 400 books about the birth of the atomic bomb and about science in the 1940s and about what it was like to be a soldier at Los Alamos. This huge research library finally got moved out of my apartment and into a proper office somewhere, which is that was a very happy day in the history of my marriage.
They should put it on set. They got to put it on the set so that when they do the tour, because they should just keep it up. WGN just needs to realize this is a profit-making venture that sell a tour now to go to see where they filmed Manhattan and this incredible 11-acre property that's like this intricate detail. And oh, by the way, here's Sam Shaw's office and research material.
By the way, I would love it. You can put some sort of Mickey Mouse costume on me, and I'll lead people on tours. It would be a great way to spend our hiatus. You know what? From what I get paid, I think I could sign up for that gig. I'd be all right with it. The heat might be a little rough, but I think other than that, I'll be okay. Let's do it together. Let's do it, man. I would love it. It sounds great. Great, Sam, to get a chance to finally talk to you, and love of the show. Folks, WGN's Manhattan starts Sunday night at 10 p.m., but you need to make sure you watch those first 2 episodes. It's a mandate. If you're a listener of this show, I'm telling you, you're going to love it, fall in love with it. It's a great, great piece and great, great work. Sam, phenomenal stuff. I can't wait to talk to you again. We definitely got to catch up maybe near the end of the season, right before a finale or something, kind of touch base then. I would love it. Please have me back. Absolutely. I would love it. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for having me on. All right. Thank you, Sam. God bless. Take care.